Welcome to this panel discussion, Migrants at Sea, High Expectations and Limited Solutions. First, allow me on behalf of the panel to thank Frontex and to thank Director Ilkka Laitinen for this invitation to be here today. Thank you to Eva for conceiving and then convening this panel, which gives us, I think, an excellent forum for which to explore a complex, interesting and highly important issue. Thank you also to those such as Berenica, who have put so much work into organizing today and making sure that we all can convene like this and that we all have a place to stay and something to eat this evening and so on. So, without further ado, this interesting topic that we're here to discuss, Migrants at Sea, High Expectations, Limited Solutions. This topic has come to particular light in recent months. As I'm sure you're aware, last year there was a boat that sank off the island of Lampedusa on the 3rd of October, where despite the efforts of the brave rescuers involved, more than 360 people lost their lives. But this was just the latest in a string of incidents that have seen 20,000 deaths at sea in the Mediterranean over the last 20 years. However, this incident in particular seemed to provoke public and political outcry. Everyone from the Italian Prime Minister to Ban Ki-moon, the Secretary General of the United Nations, and even the Pope declared that this should inspire action to make sure that this never happened again, that no more lives would be lost at sea. The EU also agreed and set up a task force to address the issue, and Commissioner Malmström has repeatedly called for short, medium and long-term solutions to the problem to be found. This included increased patrolling and search and rescue activity to be conducted in parallel with patrolling for the purposes of border control. And this enhanced activity was to be carried out by national agencies as well as within the enhanced cooperation mechanisms provided by Frontex. Moreover, it was to make use of the enhanced capacity provided by tools such as Eurosur, and enhanced cooperation and coordination between EU countries as well as between EU and neighboring countries, and also to benefit from advances in detection, surveillance and tracking technologies. So what we face is a situation where a combination of political declaration and technological and institutional evolution has raised the level of public and political expectation about what border guards should be doing in the Mediterranean. But in fact, these technologies, and indeed the political situation itself, limit what can be done in these situations. And this has placed an intolerable burden on border guards, with consequences for both border guards and with tragic effect for migrants. This panel therefore seeks to explore the possibilities, but also the limits of what is currently possible with regard to technologies, with regard to cooperation and coordination, information sharing, but also to look at the realities that this current gap between expectations and solutions presents for both border guards and for migrants. So allow me to introduce the panelists who will provide a wide diversity of views and perspectives on this topic. First of all, we have Cristina Jorge from Frontex, who is the head of the Joint Operations Unit in Frontex, at Frontex, and who will be talking about the capabilities and limits of coordination, and especially with regard to Eurosur. Then we have David Rios Morentin from ISDEFE's Intelligence and Homeland Security Division, who specializes in border management and is part of the Close Eye project, amongst many others. And David will be discussing the technological limits and capabilities of the current situation. Then we have Lieutenant Marvin Ingólfsson, who is from the Icelandic Coast Guard, from the Special Operations and Bomb Disposal Unit, and he will be discussing the realities for border guards of the current situation. And finally, we have Giorgos Tsarbopoulos, who is the head of the UNHCR office in Athens, who will be discussing the realities of the situation for migrants. And then finally, I will be presenting something on the political context within which all this takes place. After the panel have presented, we will then return to them for some rebuttal comments, and then we will open the floor for your questions. So do please think, if you have some pertinent intervention to make, there will be a chance to do so towards the end of the session. All right, without further ado, I will hand over to Cristina. So please, take us away.
Okay, thank you very much, Benjamin, and good morning, everyone. I would like to say that, as you all know, Frontex is the agency that coordinates the operational activities at the external border of the EU. And this is done from the operational perspective through the planning and implementation of joint activities, joint operations in specific areas of the external border that are more targeted by the immigration flows. The aim of such operations is, in one hand, to reinforce the resources of the host member states in order to provide more support in surveillance and control of the borders. But on the other hand, there is a big component on building capacity also in these member states and support with developing new structures, new solutions to face the challenges of border control and surveillance. Eurosur came as one of the tools, along with other technological and other procedimental solutions that we in the agency try to test and put in place in order to support the member states. And Eurosur, in fact, is a common platform for exchange of information. This exchange of information allows us to get a better situational awareness, better situational picture of what is happening in our external borders in several levels. There are some added value components that came with the introduction of this system, and we can see it in different layers. If we look into the national one, we can say that the creation of the national coordinated centers improved the cooperation between the national authorities. And this was one important step in order to put different authorities with relevant competencies. For instance, and here we are dedicating to the maritime domain. So in the maritime domain, at national level, we have different authorities working in the same environment, and then through the creation of the national coordinated centers, they are now working together. They are creating and gathering the information that is relevant, related to the situation at their external border, analyzing and introducing this information into the Eurosur network. Collecting all this information, Frontex gathers also the information that is available from the joint operations that we put in place. This is the responsibility of Frontex to introduce this information, and then by gathering this all information, we achieve the European situational picture, and also a much better awareness related to what is ongoing and what will be the trends in the external border. This is important, and what are the results of this better awareness? We can, with this information, create together with the member states the impact levels at the external border sectors. This is very important if we think about the planification of future operations at the external border. We have the impact levels, so we have a clear idea where there is a need to strengthen operationally speaking. And this is important, of course, for the reaction capacity, either by the member states and also through the support of Frontex. So this is Eurosur. Eurosur is an information system supporting better awareness that conducts to impact level definition and then to response according to the real needs. Now, what is important to achieve this? First of all, that all stakeholders participate at the same level by using this network, by using this platform, introducing in quantity and quality the relevant information that can be used to define this national picture, this European picture, and then through the analytical products that Frontex can provide by evaluating all these features and other services that we provide, having this pre-frontier picture also of what are the trends and where are the areas where we could eventually face some more flows, some more incoming immigrants towards Europe. This is one of the relevant parts. Frontex also provides to Eurosur some additional services that are used to better plan and better implement the operations. We are talking about tracking of vessels that are circulating in the Mediterranean. We are talking about weather and sea conditions, up-to-date information on these areas. We are talking about tracking of our own assets, the assets that are deployed to the member states, to our joint operations, so we can have a picture or on where they are deployed and how they can better be used during the operation. This is the additional services that we are providing. We have to bear in mind the difficulties to put in place an operation at sea, and we have to bear in mind also that Eurosur is just about this exchange of information. We don't have, as I think there is some misunderstanding in the public area, sometimes even in the political domain, that considers Eurosur as some sort of big brother, and that we are actually having a clear picture and real view of what is happening in the Mediterranean Sea. And I give as an example that one researcher contacted us quite recently. She wanted to have some video images of the incidents occurring in Ceuta. So there is a clear misunderstanding of what is Eurosur. Eurosur is not surveillance cameras that we can at any moment see what is happening there. Concerning our operations at sea, with the support of Eurosur, there can be better targeted. So we can put the support where it's really needed. And if we consider the challenges and the limitations that Frontex has from legal perspective, budgetary perspective, resources perspective, the more targeted we can put our operations, the better outcome and the better support we can give to the member states. Frontex is not an agency that coordinates search and rescue. We contribute, we do our best to participate, but we are not responsible for coordination. National authorities have own structures for the coordination of search and rescue. We have been doing quite a big contribution in this area, and I will just end up with some figures that I consider quite relevant. Frontex has been considered the entity that saved more lives at sea worldwide in the last years. So during our joint operations in our operational area, we had, for instance, in 2013, a number of more than 37,000 lives saved. And in 2013, until the 21st of May, already almost 39,000 lives saved at sea during our joint operations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ana Cristina. Okay, allow me to pass on to David Rios Morentin.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. Good morning, everyone. First of all, let's thank Frontex for inviting me here. It's a pleasure to share this panel with all of you. There's a lot to say about the role of technology in maritime border surveillance. Let's say if we can concentrate it in just some key messages. The entry into force of Eurosur has revealed once again how relevant is technology for ensuring the quality of surveillance. Indeed, there's a strong perception that the success of maritime border surveillance operations is very much linked to the technical capabilities available. That's the reason why during the last years research and development in this field has gained such a prominent position. We live in an unstable scenario that's widely known. Everything needs to adapt, and so does technology, which needs to be fit for current situation, but also to adapt for whatever is coming in the future. Therefore, we permanently need to know what are the capability needs, what are the obstacles we're facing, what are the solutions available under readiness level. In brief, there is a need to know what is the capability building space and what is the growth margin. In fact, there is a margin for improvement. Sometimes there is maybe too much focus on technology, and there are other elements which are collateral to technology and which also need to be developed in parallel. We must not lose all of these different perspectives. So let's say why information transparency does not seem to increase the performance of surveillance. I think in fact it does, but it's not the only element that contributes. Surveillance is the prelude to intervention, so the quality of surveillance has a lot of importance in ensuring that intervention is carried out when and where it is needed. That's why it's also so important to run knowledge-based operation. Information superiority is therefore paramount to speed up the networking between decision makers, operators, sensors, assets, etc. Eurosur has taken really huge steps in order to increase this information superiority by setting up the systems concept based on coordination center, situational pictures, communications network, common application of surveillance tools, etc. But Eurosur also will keep growing. In order to guarantee this information superiority, there are two aspects that we need to consider, and I think they cannot be detached. On one hand, we have to increase the quality and availability of information, and on the other hand, we need to make the best use of existing information. When talking about increasing the quality and availability of information, we refer to obtaining information from the area of operations. So being small boats the main threat at the moment in maritime border surveillance, there is a real need to increase the range of detection, identification and tracking beyond the coastal sea, and also to increase the persistency of surveillance mainly at high seas. There is, of course, sensors play an important role here, cameras, radars, etc. But the sea is huge. It's a huge surface. And to sustain only the detection, identification and tracking of vessels, to sustain only on sensors, it's not possible. We need to have a more comprehensive approach. Acquisition is not the only capability driver, so we need to promote also command control and coordination, exploitation, resources management, mobility, sustainability, etc. How much control is possible today? It's difficult to quantify or to translate into facts and figures, but let's say that the use of sophisticated equipment may have created a false impression of what can be done. There are obstacles from the real world, obstacles that the security bodies face every day. These obstacles hinder the achievement of the surveillance of the mission, of the operational, of the mission objectives. Sorry. And these are from the real world, like I said, so this means that they are difficult to characterize and difficult to control many times. So whenever there is an inability to overcome some of these obstacles, this means that we have a capability gap or several, and this is linked directly or indirectly to technical shortfalls. It does not mean that the current technologies do not work, but maybe they need to be complemented or have increased developments or new concepts of use, etc. This map of obstacles is extremely complex, and there are dynamics as well. There are strong relationships between the obstacles, so they cannot be treated independently. The same happens to technology. Technologies are not independent. The development of one particular technology may be affected by the lack of development of another technology. So smaller scale solutions can address maybe one obstacle, but to encompass the whole situation, to address the whole situation, we need to combine solutions in an innovative way and to have a more global view of what is required to conduct maritime border surveillance operations and the systems involved. But this is sometimes dangerous because these capabilities we need are expensive. So maybe sustaining only capability development on bigger and better and faster and more expensive systems may not be cost effective. There are many different things that we need to consider.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, David. And on to Lieutenant Marvin Ingólfsson from the Icelandic Border Guard.
Thank you very much, Benjamin. Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure for me to be here today, and I want to say congratulations with all the border guards with this day. As you all know, this is of course very large and complex field, if you can say it like that, and I'm going to go through two topics related to that. First of all, the basic informations needed for us for a normal interception or SAR calculations that we need is of course the first thing that we need for the area is the risk analysis and the risk assessment for the area. And from that we are building up our procedures and which level we're working on, if you can say so on. And of course with time these informations that we're receiving are changing the assessment, so we are developing the tactics. The basic information is like you mentioned a little bit before, was that the position of the detection of the boat, the time of detection, the departure time, the number of boats, people on board, and etc. And then of course like the weather conditions, we are well related to that. The important information that is necessary for our preparation on board after interception has taken place or on successful search and rescue is the first thing, the nationality of the people on board, because we are often facing very language problems and so on, and by that we can prepare us a little bit more. Religion, when it comes to religion, we have to develop our searching methods, and we have to the food supply, and then the separation when we are taking the people on board. If you're going to separate the people, building on the relation and so on, religion, sorry. And then the main question is the facilitators among the people or not? And this is, of course, different between areas and which tactics they're using or what we can expect from them, basically. And in that case, we have to think about more like the weapon search. We have to take more care about the evidences. The approaching methods for fast rescue boats is a totally different thing. And then we have to evaluate things. Are we going to make the rest of the facilitators on board the ship, or are we going to wait to the next port and let the authorities deal with it there? Then, of course, it comes to the prioritization of if they take the people on board or not, and how we're going to prioritize it. Is it the situation of the boat? Are there any pregnant ladies on board, minors, deaf people, and so on? The complexity of the task is, of course, in the beginning, we have to, in a cooperation with the ICC, try to find the right position for the ships. Usually, it's a large area that we have. We have known traffic lines between different areas. And in some cases they are not active at the moment, and some of them more active than the other one. So we have to try to place the OPV on the right place, building on the intel information receiving. In some cases it's successful, but in many cases we are between the areas, so we're basically in a long distance from both of them. And that is also regarding how the surveillance aircraft are flying and so on, because if they detect a target, we want to be close by, both for their security and also by doing early detection. Another complexity is of course that is the interception taking place inside or outside the search and rescue region? That's of course a huge difference between that, what we'll do. Which nation will react according to agreements, and are there any liaison officers from that reacting nations in the ICC or LCC that can help us by having the right point of contact and trying to reduce the waiting time. And then if the origin of the boat is known or not, and if you have a large area like in the coastal area where the boats are maybe have been sailing for a long time or drifting in areas, that can sometimes be a problem. And then how to evaluate, is it a rescue or not? What is a rescue, and who is responsible to evaluate it, and what's the difference? And of course we can have a normal interception that goes from a normal interception into a rescue if the waiting time is too long, because the waiting time is crucial. We have to evaluate how many incidents can we handle at the same time. Is it possible to send 1 or 2 fast rescue boats at the scene? If we, for example, have 2 boats, what's the maximum distance that they can go from the OPV? And how long is the waiting time again? And what are they going to do in the meantime? The tactics of the migrants that complicates the tasks, of course, is that we have to show precautions when we're approaching the boats, because there's lots of panic and stress both for the border guards and also for the immigrants when approaching, and they have trying to capsizing the boats, sinking the boats and so on. They try to put the fire on board, all the navigational aids and evidences are dropped into the sea. And then again, are the facilitators among them or not? Are they threatening the people on board and so on? So that's the thing that we have to find out. And then we have to prioritize who we will move to the OPV if necessary. Like recently cases are showing us that we have immigrants hitting on board sailing boats, expensive stolen yachts and so on. That's harder for us because to see if the people are on board or not. And we have to do an inspection on board the ship. And again, are they inside or outside the territory? And also the complicated text is onto which flag state is the boat we're going to search, and what's the nationality of the crew. And also in that case, because we always have the opportunity to call in with the information and get some advice from the ICC and so, but our assets have to be capable to be totally independent, because we can always have the problem that we can face, that we can be out, totally out of communication. So we have to be able to evaluate that for ourselves. A little about the preparation on board. Of course, human rights, that's our priority. We have to make them, give them a medical assistant. Think about security for our own people, of course, separation of facilitators and immigrants. We have to take care of the evidences and so on. And then for ourselves, like has been recently happening in Africa, that we have to think about the protection care when it comes to epidemics and so on. And then we have to evaluate how many people can we take on board the OPV, because that's a problem that nobody wants to face, because maybe you have a small asset with maybe 15 to 18 crew members, and you come up on boats where you have maybe 100 plus immigrants, and they start to sink the boats. So automatically you have to risk the life of the border guards in that case to take the people on board, because no one, like you know, would like to leave anyone behind. The practice of conducting the search and rescue mission while patrolling is that, of course, according to international law and conventions, it's mandatory for us to react if we are on the area, and the assets are in the position to react, and also they have the appropriate search and rescue capability, both when it comes to equipment and training. So I think it fits very much together. But the question is, like it's been happening, that when people are getting rescued and the goal is getting rescued, then of course they will reach the goal if they're getting rescued, and in many cases outside the area. This is pretty much for me, but also like everyone inside our job, the flexibility, of course, is the key word.
Thank you very much, Marvin. Okay, finally I'm going to hand over to Giorgos Tsarbopoulos to talk about the realities of this situation for migrants.
Okay, thank you very much. 7 minutes for realities from the migrant's perspective now. This is very difficult, really. But I will start with something Mr. Leitner said, the magic word. We met in Evro several times. So he said, not simplifying. I think this resumes everything. Complex issues require comprehensive response, and this should come first from the policymakers. And then it is translated to the operational front. So the crucial question is really how to balance, how to conciliate the need to prevent irregular crossing. This is one of the main purposes of your work, and the need to provide access to safety and to protection for refugees. And in order not to simplify, I would ask you to stop speaking about migrants and at least speak about migrants and refugees. As regards the Mediterranean crossing, mostly people arriving are from refugee-producing countries. I will give you some figures later on. So now my observations and my appeals and my skepticism is mainly addressed to policymakers. Some of the observations have also to do with people who implement the policy decisions, like you. So if we try to speak about realities for refugees and migrants, I would resume in 3. Their life at serious risk when they undertake the sea crossing. Second, additional dangers or human rights abuses that strict border control measures might cause. And third, international protection needs not properly addressed. So the responses should be directed, first of all, prevent loss of life. Second, not create these additional dangers while operating border surveillance and ensure compliance with human rights. Just to mention pushbacks, complaints about ill treatment, and also what I will try to resume as red lines when interception and deterrence at sea, at the operational level. And finally, ensure access to safety and protection for refugees. This is nice theoretically, but very difficult to implement it operationally at the sea borders. Just a reminder, Central Mediterranean, I'm trying to be practical. Reference I will make to the Central Mediterranean crossing, that means from North Africa to Europe through Malta and Italy, and to the East Mediterranean crossing. This is the Aegean Sea, Greek-Turkish borders. So a trend that continues is that the Central Mediterranean crossing today, the main nationalities are Eritreans and Syrians. So I would say mainly refugees. You know that in 2013, 60,000 people arrived by sea through the Central Mediterranean, and the numbers are increasing today, currently. And you very well know that between 600 and 700 100 people died in this perilous crossing last year. Now, as regards the East Aegean crossing, the main nationalities here, according Sea Borders official statistics in Greece, 90% of new arrivals at sea borders of Greece from Turkey are from Syria, main nationality today, so refugees, Afghanistan, Somalia, Eritrea, Palestinians. So you see the refugee angle, how majoritarian it is in the East crossing. There has been the big swift from the land to the sea crossing under very perilous conditions in the Greek-Turkish border since August 2012. What happened August 2012? The construction of the fence in Evros, among other things. So we managed to control better the land borders, and as a result, we have increased sea crossing with people, with ships, shipwrecks, and people dead. So how to reduce the loss of human life? This is the big question and the first priority. UNHCR proposes to further strengthen search and rescue operations at sea and to reinforce and maintain patrols along the Mediterranean routes. Whenever there are indications that a vessel or the conditions of people of board do not allow the safe travel. This is a big discussion, but I would say that the new proposal for the Frontex-led joint operations, especially in Article 9, establishes new elements that can help to reinforce these operations. The challenge in the central Mediterranean crossing is to maintain the large-scale operational intervention of the Mare Nostrum, which is in fact a preventive intervention, considering that mostly the vessels intending the irregular crossing are at risk of distress. So intervene not when the ship is sinking, but before. How is this possible? The key question is to ensure that there will be an efficient rescue operation in the case of Mare Nostrum is discontinued. And for that, of course, key elements is a stronger joint EU response through shared responsibility among member states. And my question is, what is Frontex approach and what will Frontex role will be in the case that after June, Italian government will not be able to continue Mare Nostrum. And just to give you an example of what the press present, how the press present Mare Nostrum, no? Two different angles to read the news. More than 43,000 people rescued at sea since October 2013, thanks to Mare Nostrum operation. Versus Mare Nostrum operation turned the ship of the Italian Navy into ferries for illegal migrants, a taxiway to Italy, a travel agency. You see, two different angles to read the news, two different approaches, and of course, we say that protection of borders, second, protection of people first. Not difficult to implement for you. Another issue, I know, yes. Okay, this is at the operational level, I would say in the Aegean now sea, the challenge is to strengthen and enhance the search and rescue operations because there is room for that. I could mention, if you have questions, some tragic incidents that show that there is room for enhanced preparedness, efficiency, and further improve the technical capacity. A key element here is a better cooperation between Greek and Turkish Coast Guard authorities. And also Frontex has an important role to play. Now, just to mention that pushbacks, what I mentioned as additional dangers refugees and migrants face, according to their complaints, their allegations to us. I'm not going to say that this is true, it is not true. I will simply say that they complain that they are systematically pushed back. In the past, we know that this was happening in the international waters. Mare Nostrum operation has ceased. Now we have it in the Aegean Sea. And the modus operandi of pushbacks, apart from being illegal, is very dangerous for reasons that I can explain for the people's life. We have also several allegations about mistreatment, abuse behavior, disproportionate use of force. We have examples also here. So all this needs serious investigation, and how could Frontex play a more active role on monitoring these allegations? This is my question. And finally, and this is the most difficult, at the operational level, even when we don't have human rights abuses, even when we don't have pushbacks, the deterrence measures at sea per se might generate increased risks for people's life and safety. Where to put the red lines, depending on the way these operations are carried out and the ad hoc circumstances of the moment of the operation, whether the conditions of the vessel, maybe the interception or the prevention from entry, which is mainly your duty, should be avoided. When? I think also, dear Director, this is a very interesting debate for red lines, what I would call. And finally, I leave to you in order to have, let's say, more possibilities for refugees to have access to safety and protection according to international binding legal instruments. Of course, border guards cannot differentiate when a boat approaches if it's carrying migrants or refugees. So how to deal with that? At the operational level, it's extremely difficult. But at least we could hope that opening possibilities for legal crossing by other ways, you could reduce these perilous journeys. So let's let's enhance the legal alternatives.
Okay, thank you very much, Giorgos.
Resettlement, humanitarian admission, family reunifications, doors to the wall, doors to the fence, to the land crossing. Is it possible, operationally speaking? These questions, of course, cannot be dealt today. I'm sorry to provoke you. It's not to you, it's to the policymakers. But this debate needs to start. Otherwise, we will have another Lampedusa tragedy when Italy will not be able to continue the big operation is carrying out today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Giorgos, and thank you indeed for setting up my brief contribution to this debate. It's been extremely useful for all of these very concise and thought-provoking interventions about the capabilities and limits that we have in relation to the expectations that have been set in dealing with migrants at sea and the consequences of it. But as Giorgos rightly says, there are political aspects to this debate, and these require political action to address them. Firstly, and most obviously, we could perhaps think of some of the issues that were raised by Professor Ruben Zaiotti this morning about potential tensions between security and freedom, between the consequences of increased surveillance and fundamental rights. However, these are quite well-rehearsed debates, so I won't go over those again here. As Giorgos has already spoken about issues relating to refugees and those in need of international protection, I will focus my intervention here, or my contribution here, on so-called economic migrants, or perhaps migrants who wish to enjoy the benefits of freedom, security and justice, who wish for a better chance to live in peace and prosperity, and who are willing to risk their lives to get that chance. Who can blame them for wanting to do this, first of all, but also who can help but admire people who are willing to put their lives on the line to actually go and achieve these goals? They are, as Ian Goldin, Cameron and Balajaran note in their history of migration, exceptional people, who could also be exceptional in the European Union. And imagine harnessing that energy and determination for positive purpose, if we can, which raises the issue of creating legal routes in for migrants. Yet, we don't seem to be able to have the proper political discussion about this at a European level, nor even at a national level. Perhaps I would put it to you because we've lost something in terms of confidence in ourselves and the way that we do things, in the ways that the EU has made itself into what it is, which has built the EU, as Cecilia Malmström has called it, as open and free, and these core values that underline what it is that we do. how we've built the EU that embodies values that go far beyond Europe, but which have become known as European values precisely because we are the best upholders and exponents of them. We've become cautious, and I would put it to you, too cautious in recent years. Even though the Union has expanded, we've successfully extended the Schengen zone, the area of freedom, security and justice that's so highly valued by EU citizens. But we've worried that outside lurks insecurity, unfreedom and injustice, and that people moving in will bring these things with them. Frankly, we should have more confidence in ourselves. Our self-confidence has taken a battering in recent times in the economic crisis, and the ways and means about which we've gone building peace and prosperity in the European Union have been questioned. Crucially, we've come to think about the EU in a societal level as much more about narrow, calculated self-interest rather than about upholding the values that underpin the ideas of the project and the ways it's been realized, for example, with the Schengen zone. I would say that if we look after the values, the interests will take care of themselves. We do indeed need to be secure as well as free, because, to quote Klaus Rosler, who I can see here in the front row, if you are not secure, you are not free. And we also need to protect that which we have indeed built and which many before us have worked so hard to create. But at the moment, one of the key aspects of providing security is risk analysis, and this is central to everything that Frontex do. It's central to the activities of the EU Border Assistance Mission. It's central to the activity of border guards Europe-wide. And this is indeed a key tool for looking at vulnerabilities, threats, and the impacts they potentially have. However, there's no counterpart to risk analysis that would look at the potentially positive aspects of what migrants can bring to the EU, as well as to themselves and to the countries that they come from. It could look at economically, socially, culturally, and in terms of spreading European values from person to person. We don't calculate this with the same rigor and with the same systematicity that we do threat and risk. And this is something that's come out quite clearly from the research that I've been conducting over the last few years, is a need to develop something like this opportunity analysis that could provide a counterpoint in public debate to risk analysis. To be perfectly clear about what I mean, it's of course right and proper that border agencies focus on border security while respecting fundamental rights and promoting fundamental freedoms. But as societies, we need to consider these opportunities that potentially we're missing out on, as well as the costs that we see so clearly. We need to make sure that we do not securitize migration and shut ourselves off to what Steven Pinker has called the better angels of our nature. I would say this is one way in which we can begin to have a proper conversation about migration and mobility. And as Commissioner Malmström has emphasized, migration is indeed an opportunity, not just a threat. It is, however, misused as a political football in by national politicians, and we can see that populist politicians across Europe are gaining strength with the elections that we have today. However, this is not a sign of our strength and confidence. It is a sign instead of weakness, fear, and timidity. Collectively, we need to go about busting the myths that surround migration and mobility. For example, we know from research that has been conducted that migrants do not, quote unquote, steal jobs. We also know that they actually tend to take less out of the state than they put in. That's in terms of benefits, in terms of use of public services, and also in terms of paying taxes. We know from the Clandestino report that the number of overstayers in the European Union has been largely overstated. But we should also remain to be aware, and I'm sure I don't need to remind people in this room of it, that these are people who are moving in, not angels, to quote Lucia Slajkova of IOM in Czech Republic. And we know there are difficulties in integrating and accepting people from different countries and different cultures. But we do need to have a conversation about migration that looks at the benefits as well, and indeed provides these legal routes in for people. That doesn't mean totally open borders. It does mean providing legal routes as an alternative to forcing people into irregular and illegal ways of doing things, as the Polish state migration policy has tried to do in recent years. It does not mean shutting down entirely and throwing up our hands, and again, nor does it mean totally open borders. But it does mean recognizing that probably, no matter how we try and plan migration in order to plan for future public services, for how we wish our societies to be run, and so on, demand will probably outstrip supply. What we need to do, fundamentally, is to draw on our history, our recent history in Europe, that has combined, to quote Jacques Delors, vision, heart, and strategic realism. We should stay true to our values and principles, as well as looking after our interests, and in fact, we do the second by doing the first. And we should have confidence in our continued ability not only to uphold, but to spread these values and share them with others. famously, Tomáš Masaryk, who was the first president of Czechoslovakia, said, and this is echoing something that was mentioned this morning about Europe as a laboratory. Masaryk said, "What is Europe but a laboratory atop a graveyard? I think we need to keep the laboratory open, and we need to keep the laboratory running in order to have a better debate about migration." Okay, so that was attempting to give a little bit of political context to some of the more practitioner-led and migrant-based and then technological-based interventions that we've had before. I would like to give the chance to the panel to respond briefly to what we've each said, so just quick comments from you, and then we will open to the floor for questions, of which I hope that we have provoked a few. Okay, so to Anna Cristina first, please.
Thank you very much. And you just stated something that it's very relevant and it's now very much in the discussions, which is about migration policy. And we have to start finally discussing this in the serious manner and not thinking that the ultimate solution is to put operations in the Mediterranean or wherever external border, and this will solve the migration crisis situation. This is not the ultimate solution. This is just one instrument. And it has to be clearly defined that the migration policy needs to be revised, and as you said, channels have to be open in order to avoid that people have to come in this way towards Europe. Nevertheless, I would like again to stress, and I think if we put together all the presentations, we got a very clear view on the complexity that is to put an operation in place in such an environment, the difficulties, the threats that the migrants put them through, the need of security also for border guards when they are deciding on how to proceed while detecting an immigrant's boat. Safety, security, it's definitely the first challenge that they have. We spoke, and in the first panel this morning, that it has been said there are still many legal challenges already. Apparently, we are moving into a direction where better guidelines and stronger guidelines are being produced in order to guide us as coordinators of these activities, on give clear instructions and clear guidance to the border guards that are in the floor, they are in the field, developing the activities on how they could better proceed and better decide when they are facing such challenges. I would like to pick up from something that has been said this morning about smart officers. We have smart officers. I'm convinced that our officers are smart and they are making the good decisions and they are taking the relevant guidance in order to save the lives at sea and to proceed the best way possible to try to balance what is the objective of border surveillance without neglecting the respect and the need for respecting the fundamental rights and the saving of lives at sea.
Thank you very much indeed. And yes, just to emphasize one of the points that Anna Cristina picked up on, without having this political discussion, who's listening to this, I wonder? Without having the political discussion, we put too much of a burden on border guards and use the border to manage migration rather than having a proper migration strategy behind. And that is the big issue that we face. It's not fair for border guards, and it creates a bad outcome for both border guards and migrants. Okay, to David, please, your comments.
Yes, it's clear how complex this issue can get. Again, I want to recall what the problem of simplification that Mr. Ingólfsson mentioned this morning, and also Giorgos mentioned some minutes ago. It's difficult to say everything in this 7 minutes, so I will try to summarize what I said and what I did not say in this 7 minutes in some main points. How to resolve capability gaps, how to come through these capability gaps. We need to focus. Sometimes we just go directly to the solution, to technology, and say we need this. We need to start thinking from the problem. What are our objectives? What do we need? What obstacles are we facing? And then we will come up with solutions. Determine the urgency levels. Determine if we are facing a situation that we need to resolve in short term or in the long term, in order to go to procurement, to development of very mature technologies or basic research for long-term development. Don't forget about the processes that lie behind. Don't forget about the concepts of operations. Don't forget about the procedures. Don't forget about the training, legal framework. All of this also has something related with technological decisions. And also explore new alternatives. And don't, for the sake of cost efficiency, firstly, don't underestimate the role of procurement, of new procurement tools, interagency cooperation, solidarity between member states. We need to minimize also the risk of investment on the member states when they decide to acquire new technologies. We need to jump from the traditional model, which is based on force size, to another one which is based on mutual dependency. All these elements together are at least as relevant as the perceived requirement to acquire massive systems or take risky decisions in terms of investment when acquiring new technologies.
Thank you. Marvin.
Yes, maybe just one thing that I want to add and highlight, that I have seen through my experience through years that the nations have started to establish and building up a better relationship with the third nations where the departures are taking place from. And I think that that's actually a very good solution. I think that's a huge step and good step into the future. And also at the same time, we have been receiving more reliable information about possible departures that are taking place. I just wanted to add that on.
Absolutely, I would certainly second that. I think we can draw real heart and courage from the achievements we have made in terms of bringing the different nations of Europe together to coordinate and cooperate in such fruitful ways across many other fields, but also in border management. And I think that's something we were discussing just before the panel as well, the success of mutual learning between border guards, between police officers on European Union missions, and co-socialization in many different ways that give perhaps us the chance to realize these visions that have been outlaid for what we can achieve if we do actually work together. And that's why, again, I say we should draw on our recent history to take courage in going forward. Okay, Giorgos, and I ask you to be quick so we can go to the audience.
Jorge will take advantage of the event, not in order to say more about human rights and UNHCR's appeals, but to make an appeal to Frontex. Various appeals to Frontex, since here we have Frontex and the Coast Guard. So reinforce the fundamental rights component. You have, if I am not mistaken, one person? One person? How many guards for the surveillance and how many people for the human rights? One person? Okay.
There is one fundamental rights officer, but I'm sure everyone in the room would agree with me that every border guard is a fundamental rights officer.
I make it a little bit
way.
provocative, but please reinforce this component. It can play a very, very crucial role, and this is related to what I believe your monitor role can be reinforced also on the spot, on the operational, at the operational level, to make sure exactly that these allegations do not happen, or if they happen, to take corrective actions. Compliance with human rights is extremely important for the credibility of all kind of border surveillance operations. And whenever there are reasons to correct the operational plans, please assess the operational plans on the spot. I do believe that we can put, you can put, and everybody can have a contribution to put red lines when first protection of people's life and safety comes first. Despite all the efforts that we know Coast Guards at the national level are doing, but I do believe that there is room for improvement. And finally, you are the most competent ones to provoke and to invite policymakers. Invite them in their debates. Don't maintain them at the technical level. Many things that you are asked to implement, others decide about. I mean, this is what I would suggest, to promote debates. Thanks.
I would heartily second that as well. Absolutely, it's up to us to engage and to make a contribution to this public debate. So I would like to begin that by asking for questions from the floor. Do we have any questions or comments that people would like to raise? We have Klaus Rösler at the front here.
I'm Klaus Rösler. I'm the Frontex Director Operations, and I feel a bit provoked. Okay, and
Good.
I will try to play this ball, but by first saying that one fundamental rights officer for Frontex does not mean that Frontex staff is not committed to fundamental rights, period. We all have the saving of lives as a priority in our joint operations. And this is written and this is done. My question, however, goes on the title of this panel. High expectations, limited solutions. And we have heard from the interventions and added by the contribution from Benjamin that it is a huge field of policy making for the migration process, for the migration management. And this is the high expectation, how to manage the migration. And the limited solution is maybe to some extent given to the limited role of border control. Border control is not migration management. And if people think that migration management can be solved through border control, then this is an error. And in this regard, I would like to ask the question, what has Mare Nostrum to do with border control? And why is the border control agency supposed to replace it? Or I could add the question and the encouragement. It is a pity that the UNHCR is not possible to operate in Libya. And it's indeed regrettable and it is indeed a big weakness for protecting refugees, for protecting migrants, that UNHCR's big experience and big expertise in this field cannot be implemented in Libya. But it would be a part of a solution if this element of a migration management could be done and could also be implemented by UNHCR via the political decision makers, and could be further developed. That also UNHCR with his valuable experience could cover and could do its work in Libya, and this would help the migration management and the protection of migrants and refugees crossing the central Mediterranean.
Okay, thank you very much, Klaus. To give the panel just a moment to think about a suitable response to Klaus's reverse provocation, I will ask for any other questions that people have. We can take, I think we have time for one more, and then I ask the panel to respond briefly to Klaus. Yes, please.
Thank you. My name is Trpe Stojanovski, representing Mari Regional Center in Skopje, and I will keep the line of provocation. Actually, the Mari member states geographically are surrounded by their EU member states. And ironically, the main gate for irregular migration to the region is coming from EU countries, mostly Greece, Bulgaria, which is on the direction of the Mediterranean way. But one of the issues is that we have to cooperate. And after a while, I'm so happy that for 2 weeks I will attend an important meeting in Greece. After a while, it is a sign that we have to cooperate. Mari, as international governmental organization on the Western Balkans, is very much interested to be part of the projects. My voice now is going in the direction, we are present in the region and we are eager to cooperate. And I would like to invite all partners like Frontex, like EU countries in the region, just to start and to work, to leave a little bit the political difficulties in the region, and let's start to work something tangible, maybe with small steps, but in positive way. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Stoyanovsky. Okay, I will ask my panel who would like to respond to the points that have been raised from the floor. I think Giorgos, yes, please.
Very quickly, really, because your questions are totally relevant. As regards Libya, you know that the security situation today does not allow such a possibility, not only for UNHCR, but even for others, and does not even allow to have any hope today that if people are detained and do not start the dangerous crossing in Libya, they will have the minimum of the human rights guarantees that an international organization and even European Union would try to do something there. No, it's not the moment. Okay, I know that prevent people from starting this perilous journey, it can be very, very efficient and much more important than trying to stop them after. But for that, you need conditions that, at least in Libya today, they are not there. No, Mare Nostrum, you are right. It's not a migration management issue. It's preventing loss of lives, given the tragedies we had before. But something needs to be done to guarantee continuity of this. And this is that the European, I mean, this discussion, it has to become the European policy. I have the Commissioner Malmström's statements here, speaking about it is the clear responsibility of members of all member states and European Union to show concrete solidarity in order to reduce the risk of such tragedies from happening again. Speaking about the after Lampedusa and also about the latest tragedy that happened near the coast of Libya. So the question is, with what to replace it that could also give a response in terms of, I don't know, will it be border surveillance? Will it be a combination of border management, but putting the emphasis and the priority that people should be saved before their boats start to sink, because then it's too late to intervene. So
okay, thank you, Giorgos. We're going to have to cut that a little bit short
anyway,
as we're running desperately out of time.
This is a big discussion, but if we go back to what the situation was before, then we will start deploring again the tragedies of Lampedusa, and then the Pope and Barroso and everybody will go to Lampedusa. So if we don't want to go back again, something needs to be done today, because I know that June the issue will be discussed. Is Frontex prepared? I'm not blaming Frontex. I'm saying, is European Union prepared? But Frontex is the operational branch of the European Union to have some constructive ideas about this. I know that UNHCR is developing pilot projects aiming at measures that will give incentives to states for burden sharing, for responsibility sharing, for relocation schemes, for safe disembarkation that will not necessarily be the state that did the operation, etc. There are ideas, but they need to be discussed very, very openly, and when is still time.
Thank you very much, Giorgos. Okay, I hand the floor very briefly to Anna Cristina to respond to Terpe Stoyanovsky's point, and then we will close this part of the debate.
Okay, so regarding the cooperation need for the Western Balkan areas, and it has been in our aim always to strengthen cooperation not only with third countries but organizations that are already acting on the field where we also deploy our activities. And I think that especially during the last year, there has been a big effort, although we have been cooperating along the time with all the organizations that are in this area. Last year we even organized this conference which aimed to put together the different organizations that have activities in the Western Balkans, trying to find synergies, to work together, avoiding overlappings. This is ongoing with Mari. I know we have a good cooperation related to the air border control, the air border sector. We are cooperating right now on the field, and we plan this year to continue with the conferences in order order to even streamline better the possible synergies and avoiding overlappings and exhaustive of resources by putting in place things that other organizations are already thinking over. So I think we are in the good track in this issue, and I think we will continue cooperating.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Anna, Cristina, and thank you all for your attention, for your attendance, and I hope you will join me in thanking the panelists for what has indeed been a provocative debate that will continue beyond these halls and beyond this time. I can see Klaus has something more to say on the issue. I can see several other people do as well, and I look forward to, I invite you all to engage us and engage each other and to engage our policymakers and politicians in discussing these important and extremely interesting issues. So please join with me in thanking the panel for a fantastic debate and thanking Frontex for organizing this. So thank you.